Hello fellow modelers, Bruce here again. I have a little project for the back shop that I thought I would share with you fine folks. What you see here is a Varney Stock Car that has been in the family, I would say since the late 1950s, and was often seen traveling in an oval around the Christmas tree back in the DeYoung household years and years ago. I can remember almost like it was yesterday. And we're going back to when I was a small tyke and sitting around the kitchen table. My father, who had always been a Lionel man, had discovered HO scale, and Varney in particular, and had bought a Little Joe engine, a couple cars, and for that next Christmas we weren't going to have the Lionel under the tree. We were going to have Little Joe and his little string of cars going around. And that Little Joe is still with me, still runs. Some point I'll bring it out when I have enough of the layout done and show you that thing in action. It has the cutest little waddle to it that you can ever hope to see. A few of the other cars, the Varney cars, rolling stock cars, did survive. One was a flat car, which I still have. I put new couplers on it, and I put a wooden deck on it and a load, and that's packed away. I haven't unpacked it yet from the move from New Jersey. This was also packed up, and I was searching for some other things that I needed for the layout, and when I opened the box, there was this old Varney in its bright yellow Union Pacific livery here, and I have hesitated to do anything but keep it original. Somewhere along the line it has lost one stirrup step here. The other three are still on there. The doors on the stock car still operate, and I guess back in around the year 2000, and at that point my dad was 80 years old, we went around Christmas time to a big HO scale layout, and it got him interested once again in getting back into the hobby. And for the next 10 years or so, between his age of 80 and 90, he built a number of small HO scale, at least one N scale and one big loop of Lionel. He got back into the hobby big time. And I still had this car, but once he got his layout going, I thought it would be nice for him to have a car that he had bought back in the late 1950s. So I took off the couplers that were on it, which were Mantua couplers, and I'll show you what those look like in a minute, and put some KDs on it and gave it to him. And he thought that was terrific. But he had it on a layout that had some vertical changes in the track, and a couple of those dips were too steep, and he had a lot of trouble with uncoupling. So my dad, being who he was, he looked at it and said, instead of redoing that whole layout, which already had been scenic and everything, he made up some couplers of his own, and that's what you see here. Over the coupler box is a thin sheet of copper that has a hole drilled in it, and every car that he ran on that particular loop that was giving him trouble had the couplers removed and this setup put in place. And what I want to do right now is put some KDs back on it so that I can have this fine old remembrance of my youth running around my own layout from time to time. And I'm just kind of a nostalgic guy, and I can remember the things that my dad thought were the cat's meow. One of them was these sprung trucks that had real springs in it, and Varney was providing those in their kits, and the side frames were metal, so if you do have some of these old trucks laying around, don't take out your Micromark tool to remount the axle holes there, because these are metal and they'll ruin your tool. So Yeah, I'm gonna I think all I have to do is put on a set of KD couplers, and hopefully that won't be too big of a chore. I don't know what lingers underneath that copper, but I don't think it's too bad. Getting back to the Mantua coupler, if you're not an old fogey like me, you might not be familiar with them, but I still have some that are in the original packing. Mantua Metal Products Company of Woodbury Heights, New Jersey, and HO scale or 00 scale, and it was their kit 710 for the princely price of 35 cents. So just took these out to show you what they look like. So they were like an oval, and this is the hook that would go in there, and you would install them in your car, and it had a trip pin. They could be uncoupled over a magnetic uncoupler. I believe it was magnetic. It might have been some kind of little ramp affair. So they're more reminiscent of a European style coupler, but they were fairly prevalent back in the late 50s, maybe up into the early 60s. So yeah, I still have some, and I just thought you might want to see what they look like if you're a younger whippersnapper than I am here. Let me just zoom in on it a minute, and then we'll break the video here, and when I start working on the couplers, I'll show you. So there is a set of unused, new in the package, Mantua couplers. Okay, talk to you soon. Here's a quick update on this Varney reefer. Once I removed the copper couplers that my dad had made and cleaned up a little bit of the draft gear box that I had installed when I put the KDs on here for him, I see that they're in good shape. Looked like maybe he had coated around the outside a little bit with hot glue that I was able to pry off. But the boxes look fine. So I have extra draft gear box lids, and I'll slap some KD number 5s on it and make sure that they're at the proper height, and I think we'll be good to go. So talk to you soon when I dig out my KD number 5s. Okay, I've installed the first of the KD number 5s onto the reefer, and it's returning good with the spring and so forth, running free. So I just want to show you what I discovered here. I've put the return spring into, or the centering spring into the coupler box here. These coupler boxes already had the pivot device in the center. So did my covers. So I just had to cut the ones off of the cover. I also cut off the screw knobs on the side because I'm not using those. Cleaned it up with a file a little bit so the cover's ready. On the KD number 5s, I always run a file over both sides of the shank here so that any burrs or anything that were left are out of the way. I will now just put just a little bit of graphite into the draft box. Doesn't take much. You can use any powdered graphite. This is the KD brand Greasem. The next thing I do is put the coupler in, making sure that it's placed properly on both the post and the inside the return spring. Put the draft box cover on, get it into position. Over the hole, find my coupler screw, and screw it down, not too tight because these will squeeze the shank of the coupler and keep it from working properly. And again, just test it, make sure it's centering, and we're good to go. So next step, and the last step, is to put the truck's loosely in place and then check for the coupler height. Be back when I get ready to do that. Many years ago, I took a piece of pine board and mounted a piece of railing track into the center, and used some of my old brass track that I had laying around that I was not going to use on the layout. Added that to both sides, mounted a KD coupler height gauge, and this thing has been extremely useful as I work on rolling stock. So you just want to roll this up and check for your coupler height. And what's happening here is that the trip pin is catching on this lip down here, which KD has put there to let you know whether that trip pin is going to give you trouble elsewhere on the layout. So although the coupler heights are almost right, I think if I simply put one washer between the truck and the car, it will solve that trip pin problem. Let's see on this side. So the trip pin is just riding up on that. So I think the thinner of the washers is the way to go. So number 208s, the red washers are thickness of 0.015, and the gray washers are thicknesses are 0.01. So I think gray washer is all I'm going to need. I'll try that, and we should be good to go. Well, there you go. Couplers are matching up perfectly between the car and the gauge. Trip pin is now missing that little shelf, and we're all good. I did end up going with the number 208 red washers that are 0.015 inches thick, rather than the gray ones that are 0.010 inches thick. Gave it a little bit better clearance, feel much better about it. Just gotta love the fact that this old Varney car that was originally purchased by my dad in the late 1950s is still with me, and now is ready to ride the rails every once in a while. I'm going to leave it the bright yellow with the gray top, just the way it came out of the Varney factory, and there's always going to be a story to tell when somebody sees it. So that's it from the sentimental old guy that I am, and I'll be talking to you again soon. As always, if you enjoyed the video, just give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you have a mind to, and leave a comment if you have a sentimental car from your youth that you have preserved and will keep with you. All right, talk to you again soon.